Yes, my G's, how you guys doing? Got another great Serum sound for you today. This time it's another bass, but I really like this one. I've just called it the Serum Dark Bass at the moment. Here's a little preview with some drums, and then we'll break down the sound design of the patch. So there you have it. Yeah, it's a really nice one. It's got a nice kind of little groove to it. We've got a few effects running as usual, and in the oscillator section, it's fairly simple again. We've got a sine wave and actually just two sine waves essentially. Yeah, nothing too crazy over there, right? Two sine waves, one with a lot of effects on. One FMing into another, a little bit of noise, some nice filtering, low pass and notch filtering. But anyway, yeah, let's start off with the first oscillator then. Oscillator A here. So yeah, -2. We've got some tube going on this one, on the distortion settings here, distortion tube. Okay. We can add in our second oscillator already now to really get the main part of the sound to come in. And so as you can see here, this sine wave, I've used the distortion setting called rectify, and this basically goes from 0 up to 67% on an LFO, and so it's LFO 1 here, and the speed is at 1/4, so yeah, quarter notes, and a little bit of smooth on this saw down curved shape here. What I've done again, like I often do, is I've created an LFO sandwich. So I've put LFO 2 to modulate the phase of LFO 1, and it goes all the way from 0 to 100, as you can see here. LFO 2, LFO 1 phase, the amount is at 100%. And on LFO 2, the rate is set to just 1 bar, and it basically starts high, goes low, and then kind of goes up and down a little bit, and that essentially completely changes the rhythm of LFO 1. So you can see as the line moves how it sort of slows down and then speeds up and then restarts, all because of LFO 2 modulating the phase position of LFO 1. And that's just how I write my rhythms for basses, because it gets happy accidents nice and easily, you know? So there you go. That's the groove in motion. So now everything that we want to modulate in line with that groove, we just add it onto LFO 1. And over here we've got another LFO, LFO 3. Really slow up and down, and I'm just using this one on a few things to give variation to the sound over time. All right, so LFO 1 is the main movement. LFO 2 is just the carrier signal that gives LFO 1 its funk, so we don't have to use that anymore. And LFO 3 is going to be the slow variations in the sounds. All right, so anyway, the rectifier here is on LFO 1, and that's really creating the whole groove, you know. Let's put that back. There's a little bit of detuning because they're basically two sine waves that the same octave, but this one here I've done like a little bit detuned, -12. And this one, the oscillator B, also feeds into oscillator A via the FM here, the phase distortion mode, PD from B. And that's also moving a little bit on the LFO 1, as you can see here, a little bit of extra push on that FM. If I take that off, not quite as interesting or gritty. So it's the combination of the rectified sine wave, which has its levels still turned up. It's a combination of that with the way that it feeds into oscillator A that gives the final tone to the sound in this part of the process. And that's how I got that gritty growl to begin with. Okay, let's add in some noise next. So we've got the Geiger, which is my favorite part of the noise generator. Stereo all the way up, count all the way up. And we've got a couple of different things going on here. So if I take this down, even though the level's down, you still hear the noise, and that's because it's actually also feeding into oscillator B. So the noise is going into oscillator B via this PD noise section here, and that is moving on the LFO, but it's going the other way. So instead of following the rhythm and, you know, when the stab is at the top, the noise would also be with it. It's actually when the stab sort of finishes that the noise comes up, because I've modulated it to the left. So it almost acts like a sidechain, like sort of when the stab ends, the noise comes in. So it gives a bit of a counter rhythm kind of feeling. So that's how I've used it there. But it's also doing its noise hit following the stab on the direct level of the Geiger noise. Okay, so it's kind of doing two things. It's got that noise splash at the start, and then this sort of side-chained noise which comes up, which is different because it's run through the FM, so it has a different character. So like the clean noise is the noise hit, and then the FM noise is the tail, right? A bit complicated, right? But that's how I ended up making this sound. Okay, yeah, so that's basically it. And what you'll notice how I'm designing these sounds and how I'm getting the tone is I'm often using like the level of the actual sound itself, but then blending it in with the FM'd version, which is FM'd through something else, right? So it's like I'm using the noise on its own, but I'm also using it in the way that it's responding via the FM of oscillator B. And the same thing with oscillator B, like I'm using this rectified distorted sine wave with its level here, but I'm also combining it with how it sounds once it's run through the FM in oscillator A. So there's many different like little versions of the sounds that all stack up together to create the overall sonic image. Okay, but yeah, a couple more things before we move on. I did mention I have this LFO3 for this slow variation in the sound, and I've used it on a couple of things here already. So on the amount of FM on oscillator A, on the amount of rectify, so that actually increases a little bit as well, and the amount of tube on this first one, so the first sine wave distorts a little bit harder, and so that really slow LFO rate that just modulates those few parameters very subtly keeps the sound alive as it progresses, because it's kind of slightly changing. And we're going to use that LFO on a couple of the filters as well. So let's add in our first filter. The first filter is a low pass, okay? And this is filtering everything. And it almost sort of takes out, you almost lose a bit of that sort of response noise that I had in at the beginning. I've kind of sacrificed that a bit in the end here. You might still hear it subtly, but the thing is, sometimes when you're doing sound design, you end up, as you get to the next stage, something that you did earlier on in your process might potentially have become slightly redundant, you know, because you've changed some things so much by the next step. But that's all part of the sound design process, you know, because you can't. It's not necessarily always going to be the case that every single setting that you tweaked was like completely intentional. It's all trial and error, you know. But yeah, you can kind of hear that the low pass sort of taking off that noise a bit. If I turn it off, it actually still is. You can actually still hear it, so it's actually still necessary. It kind of keeps like this sort of tail of the sound still going in the background. If I take it off, yeah, you kind of lose a bit of that, like a bit of the noise signal that keeps the sound like it's still sustained, you know. So actually, although it's super subtle, it actually does make a bit of a difference there. So it's good that I put it on. It's really subtle, but it actually does help. So anyway, the low pass filter on the LFO1, of course, the cutoff quite low, 44 hertz, and then going all the way up to 22,000, all the way up to the top, you know. So it's almost all the way from left to right. But But anyway, yeah, bit of drive on that low pass. And yeah, that completely changes the whole concept of the sound, really. It gives it loads more shape and tightens it right up. Then filter 2. So I run that low pass filter into filter 2, and then on that one, it's basically a notch filter, right? So we start off around, is it 36 hertz, and then goes up to 250 hertz. So really in this low mid area is where the movement is happening. A fair bit of drive, 19%, a little bit of res, a little bit of fat. And it really, shapes up the sound, tightens it up and boosts it. And everything that we did before to get there, we've just enhanced it, because we've basically taken the best part of the sound, notched out some little areas to tighten it up, and then driven it up, so it's really nice and punchy. So what you've got on this notch filter again is you've got a subtle cut-off movement on my slow LFO as well. It only goes up about 7%, but that little change in the notch, very, very subtle, as the bass progresses over time, makes the bass feel like it's still alive always, and it's not completely predictable, you know, because the filter position is very subtly moving. Yeah, it already sounds great like that without any effects. It already works really well. And now the effects is basically just pushing it and enhancing it and giving it more stereo wow, basically. So firstly, the chorus, I've used it quite heavily because it works quite well. So I've used it on 48%, and what I've actually done is I turned up the chorus all the way to 100, and I programmed in this filter sweep, because it's got this lovely low pass filter movement, the chorus, the low pass filter mode here, and you can basically, as you hear, almost program in like another low pass filter like into the chorus. I thought that sounded really, really nice, and so I just mixed that back in. And now I've got this like low pass filter chorus effect also into the sound, just giving it like extra character. All right, then my favorite plugin, the flanger. When you turn it up, you can really hear like how the flanger moves the pitch around and gives it that sort of pitch drift, essentially. But when you have it very low at sort of 25%, you don't hear the flanging effect so much, but you know that the sound is being manipulated so that the pitch is slightly off always. So great little sort of tape emulation idea there. Then another filter, this is it's kind of like a notch filter, but very, very, it's not a notched out all the way. It's like it's the peak filter. So it's a subtle, almost like a little EQ dip that's with some movement on, you know, cut off around 366 hertz, as you see here. Goes up to 950 or so. So we're moving an area of the spectrum we haven't really played around or moved with so much yet. So it's the sort of mid-range going up to the treble almost, so the higher end of the mid-range. Just putting a bit of movement into that. And because we're cutting away, we're not touching any of the low end of the bass. That's still all at the same level. We're just cutting a bit of the high mids there for a bit of extra shaping again. A little bit of drive, and then we've got the lovely low-high splitter with distortion on the high end only, and the high end set to around 860 on this one. So everything 860 and upwards has a bit of distortion, and it's just the diode 2 mode driven up 26%, and the mix set to just under 60%, and it does make a big difference, you know. So giving a lot of crunch and brightness and joy to the whole high end, like really sort of doing a 20 or 30% volume increase on everything in the high end, but in a nice clean way. The diode 2 at the moment is probably my favorite distortion setting, especially for the high end. I feel like it has the best result. It can be too extreme, which is why I tend to mix it in and don't do it all the way. But at that low setting, it has a great result usually. Next, the bit of dimension. This is quite subtle, and only about 9%. Just a touch of extra stereo width. It's already pretty stereo at this point. Then finally, a touch of equalizer. This is just my sort of mastering adjustments here. Around 150, quite wide, but like a little 150 hertz boost. Not because you should always boost that area, but just because this sound felt like I was just looking for pockets to squeeze out some more power, and there was a little one there. Power pockets, squeezing power pockets. That's what I like to do. And then a touch of reverb again, 5%. I say again, I haven't done any reverb yet. This is really subtle. You basically almost don't hear it when it's playing. I just like to have a little bit of reverb on always, just in case you have this moment in your track when you finish the note and there's nothing else. Like you need a bit of reverb to sort of make it feel more natural with a tiny bit of a tail, so it's a really subtle little tail, but it's better than none. Okay, and that's basically then the whole Serum bass, with a Serum dark bass with a touch of LFO tool to give a little bit of room for the kicks in my little beat here. But yeah, that's my lovely Serum 2 dark bass for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm dropping this one on Patreon as well as an exclusive preset for all the paid members in there. You can start subscribing today, and you'll get charged next month on the same day that you subscribed. You don't have to wait till the end of the month anymore, which is great, isn't it? And you have to pay €1 or $1 to join, and you'll get this sound and many more things that are cool. All right, that's it for me today. May I remind you as well, if you want other preset packs for Serum, or Vital or Phase Plant, there's plenty on my website. Go and check them out on the links down below. You can also book me for mentorship, one-on-one production lessons, links also down below. Email me if you want any mixing or mastering work done. And if you do join Patreon, I recommend you really jump in our Discord tier, because that's where all the action really is. And that's more from me soon then. Much love. Take care.